We'll talk about that story another time. So for those of you who want a quick cheat sheet, you will be getting a handout halfway through the workshop. But as I've known in the past, having been both a workshop leader as well as a person who is sitting there, if I give you something, you will be distracted by it the whole time. I don't want you to jump ahead. But if you do want something, if you go, I can give you a website quickly. And if you want to go and kind of follow along with what I'm saying, you can go to the following website right now on your phone and pull it up. It'll be a full PDF. It's www.thefamilyroomsfl.com. So thefamilyroomsfl.com /MBDM, Middot-based decision making. So thefamilyroomsfl.com /MBDM. You will find the actual course. You'll find the worksheet that I'm going to give you at the end, even though there should be enough. And if not, you want it MBDM, Middot-based decision making. So you'll find three things: SFL, South Florida.com, thefamilyroomsfl.com
/what?
MBDM. Hopefully there will not be more crickets. So you'll find the worksheet, you'll find both worksheets, and you'll also find an audio version of this class that was given previously, so if you want to follow it later on. So everybody's good? Wait for everybody else to get situated. So I think you guys win the farthest travel award.
Possibly, yeah.
How long was your flight?
It was, I think it was 8.5.
8.5. All right, yeah, you definitely. So, in case my social media is working really well. So, is anybody having an issue getting on the website? The Family Room SFL, South Florida.com /VBDM. There's three things. One is going to be the overall worksheet that I'm going to give you later, just so you have a copy of it. The other one is going to be kind of the notes, which you don't necessarily need, because it'll be more of a conversation. And the third one will be just an audio of this class I gave at the Limmud pop-up 6 months ago. So, all right. So welcome. So the theme of today is Middot-based decision making. And the term Middot, is anybody familiar with what that phrase or that word is? Qualities. What else? Values. Sorry, there's way too much side noise going on. Thank you. All right, what else? So values, qualities, character traits. Of course, my mom had to put the character traits in, so it's good. Hopefully I'll make her happy here today. So the reason why I'm sharing this course, and it's actually become one of the new things that I love doing, and 6 months ago I taught it at a young professional singles workshop, and I actually titled it differently. It's what's your dating brand, and why aren't you getting what you want to get? But that really can be applied in this concept of Middot-based decision making to any real issue or any real life resource that's going on. So the concept of Middot-based decision making is, at the end of the day, whatever's going on in your life, how do you know that you're making the appropriate and right decisions? Because we're more likely to be compelled by emotions than we are by actual rational intellect. And in fact, our brain is wired 4 times more likely to be focusing on negative than we are to be on positive. And our reptilian brain, which is the oldest part of our brain, the 3 parts of our triune brain, mammalian, reptilian, and neocortex, is hardwired for safety. So when we have those negative thoughts, is this going to work out? All those things are going to overpower our rational brain, our neocortex. And therefore, how do we know that when we're going through an experience, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, that we're actually doing it proactively and not reactively? So my challenge is to everybody here is to figure out what are the things that you are deciding to make decisions on in your everyday life, whether it's your spirituality, psychological stuff, family stuff, relationships, what you eat, where you choose to hang out, who you choose to hang out with, should all be based on character traits, all based on Middot or that concept. So the second part of that is my journey of how I ended up getting here, coming from the world of being a professional Jew, full-time. I used to be in the Jewish communal world, working for synagogues and different youth groups and different camps. At Princeton University, I was a program director for the Hillel. Came back here, started graduate school, and got my master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And then subsequently, as I got more and more involved, more and more involved with mind-body work, I started going further down the rabbit hole that is not traditional in the talk therapy, psychotherapy world, to the point where one of my mentors, one of my professors, asked me if I'm still doing therapy according to the way we were taught. And happily I said no. So go figure that now, years later, there's people who are now doing what I'm doing and trying to bring that back into their worlds. So this whole journey of Middot-based decision-making got started about 3 years ago. So I practiced this modality called neuro-emotional technique, or NET. And it came out of chiropractic 35 or so years ago by a person named Dr. Scott Walker. And he found that when he was working with his patients, and they were coming back in over and over again, that they would come back for the same exact injury. And we're thinking that in this theory of like whole body, that if you work on it, you do the muscle stuff, you do the structural stuff, you do the nervous system stuff, something should eventually click, right? So if anybody's ever been into a car accident and they've gone to the general run-of-the-mill chiropractor, how many times a week did you have to go and for how long, right? 3 times, 4 times a week for X amount of months or until your insurance no longer covered it. That's not the way chiropractic and healing should be. And they found that in this integrative mind-body world of applied kinesiology, which is using much more of the spiritual nervous system side, both Chinese medicine meridians as well as nervous system responses, they found that old traumas get stored in the body, and that keeps allowing you to stay stuck in that old pattern over and over again, and you're not able to do anything different. And that became both physical symptomology as well as emotional symptomology. So one of my colleagues, who's a chiropractor in Miami for 2 years, at every conference we were at for NET, would be like, you have to go to Dallas with me. You have to go to this business entrepreneurship thing. And it kind of bugged me out because I grew up in South Florida in an environment where the people who had were the people that had and the people who didn't. And I grew up in an environment where if I was the scholarship kid or if I was this, there was always a separation between this Miami mindset of there's money and then there's everybody else. And I saw that this entrepreneurship business world were those people. And they weren't the nicest people here in South Florida. So I had this psychological block about that. So 2 years it took him to convince me. And I finally went, bit the bullet for a weekend, and by the end of the first afternoon, I realized how much this mindset of entrepreneurship is such a powerful concept, but how psychological it is. So the person who created the program, his name is Rick Sapio. Crazy whole backstory behind him is that his mom, dad got cancer when he was really young. There was 4 or 5 other siblings, I think 6 other siblings. Mom went mentally unwell, was not able to take care of them. He ended up living with an uncle, all these crazy things, ended up becoming an engineer, went to Wall Street, lost all of his money, moved to Dallas, started over again, became a capital venturist, and now is, I think, in the $2 billion range of income. And he created this program called Business Finishing School. And the whole thing he was talking about the first day was values-based decision-making. It wasn't about how to grow your business. It wasn't about marketing. It wasn't about who you hire. That got the later end, Business Finishing School. It's in Dallas. But everything was about values-based decision-making. I never heard that before. I mean, I know there's values, and I know you make decisions, but what he talked about is that if you align with a clear vision of what you want, and you come up with this basis of values-based decision-making, it will eventually lead you to the right outcome as long as every decision that you make is run through this lens. I was pretty blown away by it, because I know in Judaism, we talk about ethics, and we talk about Mussar, right? We talk about Middot, character trait development. We talk about being a mensch, all these different things. But I never heard this from wow, you can take this entrepreneurship, business growth side and personal life side and do it not just in Judaism when you're maybe in synagogue or maybe if you're learning or maybe if you're doing Shabbat. Can you take this to everywhere else in the world? So I'm like, how do I balance this? How do I make this Jewish? Because, right, that's our thing. How do we make it Jewish? Right, we did that with Matisyahu. We liked reggae music so much we needed to make somebody Jewish, right? And he came out of that gap of that. And I started integrating all of these parts of something that was unclaimed in my life. And it was taking the therapy, this entrepreneurship, and this integrative alternative medicine stuff, and weaving it together to the point where now in my practice, if someone isn't down with the stuff that I do, I won't even take them on as a client because I can't help them with one hand behind my back. So if you're not into alternative integrative medicine and you want my therapy, not going to happen. You don't even get past my doorman. which we're going to talk about in a bit. So I made all these transitions in my life, and now as I'm working on this workshop over the last couple of years and giving it more and more in the Jewish community, I'm seeing how powerful it can be when you start applying Jewish values to it. So is everybody else familiar with that term, values-based decision-making, before today? No? Okay, cool. So my also thing that I want to kind of maybe give you is this goal of how do you create a clear path of alignment with yourself and really start talking about your purpose. How do you know what your purpose is by deciding what your purpose is. It's not going to come smack you across your face. I have clients that I work with like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what my potential is. I don't know what my purpose is. And the simple question is what do you want it to be? And just decide. Just make it binary, yes or no, a 1 or a 0. I have a good friend of mine who was dating for years. And right, you know that old cliche of like, I won't date anybody who's like less than a 7 or an 8 or whatever. And he wasn't a 7, 8, or a 9. He was, maybe whatever. And once he gave up that thing, he's like, I'm done. I'm done with this game of dating. His joke was, I'm either going to decide that I want to wake up next to her tomorrow, or I don't. And one of the women that he dated seriously that next year, he ended up marrying. And it became binary, a 1 or a 0, as opposed to all these other things. And it really was, this is what I'm looking for. Do I want to see myself with this person for the rest of my life, besides all the other craziness that we can go through? Am I willing to want to wake up next to them and continue arguing and continue working it out? And it was a complete mindset shift for this person. So these things can happen. So Jewishly, where does this all begin? Where does this all start? We know we have a tradition of wanting to work on ourselves. We know we have like this, right? Everything throughout the Bible. I know the last few weeks of the Torah portions have been us going through the desert, and Mount Sinai is coming up soon, and all those different things. But the Ramchal in 1738, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, wrote this book called the Mesilat Yesharim, the path of the just, the path of the righteous. And his interview of this book in chapter 1, this is what he writes. The title's called A General Review of the Duty of Human Beings in the World. And he says, the foundation of saintliness and the root of perfection in the service of God lies in a person's coming to see clearly and to recognize as a truth the nature of their duty in the world and the ends towards which they should direct their vision and their aspirations in all the labors of all the days of their life. So it kind of sounds like a mission statement, right? To recognize the truth of your nature of what your duty should be in the world and the ends in which you should direct your vision and your aspirations in all of the labors. It doesn't say in your Jewish labors, it doesn't say in your work labors, it says in all of your labors. So it's a really powerful thought and idea. It's kind of an integration of what we do out there in the world versus what we do in our synagogue or in our home. So he focused on certain character traits in his book, and every chapter was based on a different character trait. The first one was watchfulness, which is defined as zihirut. To be careful, what are you engaging with, right? What are you mixing with? How careful are you about wandering through your day and being conscious? The second one was alacrity, which is defined as zrizut. How motivated, how excited are you to be engaged in the things that you're doing? Right now it's the joke with like everybody makes fun of millennials, that they're like the worst people to hire. But it's actually the biggest generation that actually need to find motivation and inspiration in what they're doing, and they're not just doing it for money. Especially since the market's so tough, and they know that they're going to get paid crap. But they actually need to have something to get them going, to motivate it, to be there at 9 o'clock with their triple whip mocha frappe, some pumpkin spice chai latte, right? The next one is cleanliness, nikiyut. And they really talk about it's the lack of sin. Can you have this scale of balance that you're doing more good throughout the day than things that you're doing that are going to kind of block you from reaching into your potential? And it's interesting that there's a theory in couples counseling, John Gottman, who's one of the top marital researchers, talks about this, this ledger that you should have, and it's called the positive versus negative sentiment. How many interactions during the day will you have that is positive interactions, feeding the piggy bank, emotional piggy bank, versus every one negative debit? So I just want to hear just for a moment, what do you think, right? There's this number that if you do this amount of positive interactions every day with your partner, with a loved one, versus every one negative, what's the ratio for it to be a healthy, growing, positive relationship?
4 to 1.
4 to 1, okay.
5 to 1.
5 to 1. Keep going. 10 to 1. Anybody higher than 10 to 1? 9 to 1. 9 to 1. So you would all be divorced. It's 40 to 60 positive interactions for every one negative, according to the research. So right, that thing of like 10 to 1, that's pretty good. You have a good batting average, you have a good free throw. If Shaq did that, he'd be even better than he was at free throws. But that has to be this consistent mindfulness of, even though there's an argument, even though there's whatever's going on in our life, that we're still adding to the bank. Then there's abstention of improper practices, purity, humility, fear of sin, and holiness. So just as Ramchal stated that we need to identify and work on our nature as it applies to our aspirations, the more we can come closer to God. Because at the end of the day, they talk about this concept of avodat Hashem. Familiar with that term? Avodat Hashem. Avodah is work. Hashem, so the service of God. What is our labor, our effort, or engagement? And it's not like do the mitzvah, do the positive things so you can get that little sticker at the end of the day. It's how is that increasing your relationship and your spirituality with that which you believe, whatever it is that you believe. So my question is, are we putting in 100% effort, not only in this concept of avodat Hashem, that we're looking at the world through these different lenses, are we also doing that in the rest of our life? In other words, how do you integrate every single part of you, that you don't just divide up who you are in one place and then show up differently in another place? So I want to help you create a clear purpose and part of your identity by helping you understand a little bit more by the time we're done, on where you can make some decisions. So Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers, says the Torah is greater than the priesthood and then royalty. Seeing that royalty is acquired through 30 different virtues, the priesthood is acquired by 24 different virtues, while the Torah is acquired through 38 different virtues. So I already described what Middot are, right? They're literally, it means a measurement. How are you being measured? We have a family member, Martin Greenfield, who is a famous suit maker in New York, and for the last I don't know how many years, he's been making for all the presidents, pretty much anybody famous, anybody with power, he's been making suits for that person. And he has this thing of like sticking notes in the pockets of leaders, and all the way back to Eisenhower, and it was notes about Israel, right? To support Israel. So you had this, right? The Suez Canal, all these different things, but he would just like this little peklach in the pocket, so when they get back to their office, they would pull it out and be like, oh, I got to do this for Israel? Oh, that's right. He would find any little way, and he was a Holocaust survivor, but his book's called Measure of a Man. It's highly recommend, Martin Greenfield book. But like, literally, he was all day taking measurements of people. That was his job, right? To get the exact fit so the person can show up as perfectly as they could. Part of their potential. And he truly believed that. Even to this day, he's still, every day, probably still wearing his 3-piece suits. And he's in his 90-something. Yeah. So, Middot, character traits. At the end of the day, how do you show up? And there's that big theory in the law of attraction world, for anybody who's into that stuff. The idea of like how you show up. It's like what you think about. The misnomer is what you think about is what you'll get in return, which is actually a misnomer. It's actually not true. It's actually how you feel about what you want is what you will get. So if we're thinking about how do we engage with our world, and we're spending our time talking about or dismissing things that we want or we don't want, but we spend more time talking about what we don't want, like unfortunately the political sphere of things, all that stuff's going to just come, it's going to come as a barrage. So our brain, again, neurologically gets hijacked by whatever you put your attention to. And the more you talk about what you don't want, the more you will get what you don't want to show up. For example, not a Jewish leader, but Mother Teresa, thank you, was once invited to come to an anti-war rally. And she politely declined. And they were shocked. And they said to her, aren't you anti-war? And she said, yes. And she said, well, why aren't you coming with us, said this group. Well, if you invite me to a pro-peace rally, I'll be there. What's the story? What's the narrative?
Just want to be positive.
Yeah. Right? So when I'm working with my clients and they come in for their first session, I never let them tell me the reason why they came. They've already been doing that every day for the last God knows how many weeks, months, and years with whomever they're doing that with, any previous therapists, perhaps whoever else they've been working with, spiritual leaders. I don't want to hear what the problem is. I want you to tell me where you want to be. So then they'll say, okay, well, I no longer want to be fighting, or we want to have better communication, or we want more intimacy, right? Or not have, and it's always the not haves, because they're still neurologically can't get away from that describing what you don't want. But yet when we order pizza, do you go in and say, I don't want mushrooms and I don't want olives on it? But when you talk about a problem and how you want things solved, we'll say we want the absence of whatever that is. I'll give you another neurological challenge, which when people think about this, it's like, holy crap, how come I never realized? What do you call a person who's never had a cigarette before in their life?
Smoker.
When did smoking become the anchored, higher value word? So when someone is trying to quit smoking, so let's say there's an anchor here, and the smoker status is here, and you're trying to become a what? Non-smoker. You're moving away from it. What are you still attached to? The concept of non. So think about all the different things we can do in our life and where we set ourselves up to what we used to be, what we no longer want to be, and we want to move ourselves away from it, that we have to change the language and the scripting and the narrative around that.
How would you change the smoking?
So the one that I heard from one of my professors is you have a clean air breather and a lung polluter. Because we don't have to use their paradigm. That's a power of language. That's a power of words, right? We get so stuck using everybody else's whatever it is, right? But the lingo through whatever's happening in popular culture that becomes the normative. But why, like in the recovery, it's like in the recovery world, in the 12-step world, it's like I'm an addict. Is part of the AA thing versus I'm in recovery. And they have there's different philosophies and different theories about that. Right? Once an addict, always an addict is the AA thing, and you're always an addict, even if you're in recovery, even if you're completely sober. So, there's a lot of ways that different groups will approach that mindset of things. But I think this all goes back to the concept of who are we trying to be, how are we trying to develop, and what's anchoring us back. Does that make sense? So maybe just take a second, which wasn't part of my thought, but is there something that you might need to re-narrate in your head, something that you're wanting to have differently in your life? And you want to come up with a different script for it. You want to come up with a different way of talking about it, a different way so it no longer becomes this constrictive thing. So maybe, mark that down, whatever it may be. So going back to this idea of Middot, we have this idea that there's 30 qualifications according to become royal in Judaism, this royalty. You have to attain these 30 different character traits. But to become a priest, you only have to have 24, which is kind of interesting. So I guess royalty is above priesthood in Judaism. But the Torah is attainable through 48. In other words, to really get it all, to really become a person who understands spirituality and why God's blueprint is however God's blueprint is, you have to get some of these traits. I'll read off some of them. By audible study, which is what we're doing now. In the actual schools of learning, it's all the debate, right? The back and forth. Audible study. We also pray, even if we're in our silent prayer of the Amidah, it's supposed to be you're not actually supposed to say it in your head. It's supposed to be only audible enough for your lips, for your ears to hear it, not the person next to you. So when you're doing the silent Amidah, it's not actually 100% silent. It should be the half quiet Amidah. But you should actually hear what you're saying. Right? Distinct pronunciation, which thanks, hopefully doing better than I was years ago with speech therapy and stuff. I was not a public speaker growing up. I actually would get Fs instead of giving a public presentation. Elementary school, middle school. So, yeah. Ask Mrs. Lubin in academic excellence. So, by the discernment of the heart and by understanding, by awe, by reverence, cheerfulness, by attaching oneself to colleagues, making yourself friends. And that's the cool thing about Limmud. There's so many different backgrounds here. So many, you have every cross-culture of Jewish life that exists in South Florida that comes to these events. And that's the beautiful thing. There's nothing else like that happens here in South Florida. And that's what makes this day so powerful. by having knowledge of the scripture, by minimizing business, by minimizing worldly interests, by minimizing indulgence, right? There's a whole list on and on of character traits. But at the end of the day, none of those really matter. Because we have to decide what you want to make for you. So now I want to take this and make this really as practical as possible, because it's the day is late. We've all been here for a while. But I want to talk about a few different concepts. So there's this tradition in the Jewish world. You kind of have like a certain split around the 1800s. You kind of have this like divergent split in the Jewish world. You had the Mussar community, the Mussar community, which were the pietists, all about ethical stuff, all about breaking down your personality and your ego. In fact, one of the rabbis used to go into a hardware store and ask for the most random, insane things that would never belong in a hardware store. And they're like, what are you doing? Why are you coming in? He's like, no, I need that cucumber so I can screw in my clock. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, the cucumber. I need the cucumber. It's here at the hardware store. And he would actually want to be berated so his ego would be nullified. He went in for that intention. And that was how extreme some of their practice, they would do other self-flagellation stuff that was way, that's no longer within the boundaries of normative Judaism, but it was so extreme on that one end. And then at the other end, you had the Hasidic movement that started. That was more about the spirituality, about the meditation, about the prayer, about the music, and and now both worlds kind of have remerged in some way, shape, or form. So this term Mussar is a term that names a spiritual perspective about a way a person perceives the world and acts in accordance to that. So we all have lenses that we see the world through. We all have experiences that define us or predispose us to acting a certain way. And that will then create a narrative, and that will then create a decision that's unconscious, a bias, that will allow us to do something, and we'll have a feeling about that, and we're going to be more likely that if we feel good about it, we'll do it again. And if we didn't like it, we'll probably do it 10, 15 more times because that's the way we are as humans before we stop doing that same mistake over and over again. So as we tie this into more of a psychological, practical thing, I'll tell you a story. So Rick, this is the story that really got me that weekend. He said he had a really good family friend, and his daughter was going through all of these issues. She was dating someone who was really not good for her. Skipping school, just acting out, a lot of challenges. And they went from therapist to therapist to therapist, nothing was working. And the dad and he were just lamenting over it. And he's like, let me take a shot. What's the worst that can happen? I'm not a therapist, but, work with people. Let's see what happens. So he goes and he has a conversation with the daughter, with his friend's daughter. And he brings her the worksheet that I'm going to give you in a little bit. And they go through it, and he talks about values-based decision-making. And that was it. Half hour, 45 minutes, whatever it was. Month, 2 months later, he gets a phone call from the dad. I don't know what happened, but my daughter just came jumping down the steps with a smile on her face for the first time in 5-6 months. Yeah. So we asked her, what's going on? Why are you so happy? She's like, well, life is good. Why is life so good? What changed? Well, I broke up with so-and-so. What do you mean? Like, we took you to all the therapists. We did all this for you. Why now? What changed? And her response was, he didn't align with my values.
Wow.
So now every single client I work with, before I even do any type of intervention, any type of anything, whether it's a kid, to an adult, to a business, to whatever it is, I can't help you unless I know what your core values are. And you can't help yourself until you know what your core values are. So I can tell you certain things, I can challenge you on certain things, I can help you unpackage certain things. But if it's not directed by where you truly are capable of being, with a baseline of this is the lens in which I'm always going to wash and repeat through, how do we know it's going to be authentic for you? How do you know it's going to get you where you really want to go? So I had a couple, I was seeing young military, and there was stuff that happened, 22 years old, and some significant stuff happened between the two of them. I didn't even get into any actual clinical interventions. I had them go home and do this worksheet. 1 week I had her, the first week was, tell me what your individual core values are. That was their first week session, at the end, homework. Came back in, we discussed it, okay, we did whatever we had to do. Second week, before you come in for the next session, for the third session, I want you to now decide and sit down together, what's your relationship core values? Kind of like, remember the family crests that they used to make back in the day that were like the symbols of where you, like what you put out to the world? Very Game of Thrones. Because I only watched one episode, so I'm assuming. So, but what's your brand? What's your family's brand? What's your relationship brand? What are you putting out into the world? They came back in, shared what they did for that. That was the last time I ever saw them. I didn't even need to get into all the, like, wow, if we did this then, now I know why we screwed up. That was it. There was no major clinical intervention. It was, what are your core values and what are your values of your relationship? What are you trying to create? Not, how are you going to handle tomorrow? And what are you putting off? And what's your responsibilities? And what's your divide and conquer with roles? What are you putting out there? What are you accomplishing? So I want to show this idea of a doorman principle. So imagine that there's a door, and there's a doorman. A very musical doorman. And this door into this room that you have is your life, metaphorically speaking, right? And there's only one door in and one door out. But the rule is that if this person or thing gets past your doorman, that door is actually only one way in and there's no exit. So once you let it in, you can't let it out for the rest of your life. What would you do? What rules would you put in place? What qualifications would you put in place? We're in Miami. We're known for our wonderful nightlife and restaurants and all these wonderful things. Imagine like on the top new whatever, Michelin 5-star chef, 4-star chef? 4 or 5? What do they go to? 4, thank you. So, brand new restaurant. And there's no reservations. What's it going to be like? And then, by the way, we're not going to tell you our dress code. We're not going to tell you right? It's going to be chaos. But the reason why there's order, right? There's a reason why there's reservations. The reason why certain people will get in first is because there's a doorman principle. And the challenge is that most of us don't have that doorman, door person principle in our lives. So I'm sure you can think about people that, like, after you got to know them and you started learning these things, you're like, oh crap, too late, can't get them out. Too little, too late. Right? We all have at least one person in our life that we've probably had to experience something like that. But why did it take so long? Or then you can't get them out because you'll feel bad. You'll be the a-hole. You'll be stuck up. You'll be selfish. You'll be closed-minded. That you're not so, but yet it's causing toxicity in your life. As opposed to just saying, here's my list of values. It seems to me like this person doesn't align with it. Okay, they're allowed to be whatever they want to be, but we just don't, our values don't align. You do you, I do me, and that's it. Keep it simple. But how dare we have the audacity to ask for that or say that? And I think this is why it's such an important thing to have this like doorman principle, because this will apply to everything. It'll apply to food. It'll apply to your friends. It'll apply to spirituality. It'll apply to wherever it is. And I have this theory of, I remember when I taught this for the Limmud pop-ups last year at Temple Menorah, someone was talking about like, well, what do you do with like all the news? With all the politics and all the news. And, the theory of like, I need to know. Well, what more do you need to know? How much more negative stuff do you need to be popping onto your radio and streaming or listening to the TV channels, right? What more do you need to know in order to be informed and educated? Is there a qualitative or quantitative actual number that you need to figure out to do that? And, right, how much suffering does it cause everybody? I don't care what side you are, I don't care who you should vote no matter what. But how much suffering does it cause, whether you're on one side, the other, whatever? Did it cause you pain and suffering to hear the other side or hear the other crap? It causes pain. No one enjoys this process anymore, but yet we indulge in it, and it becomes incredibly unhealthy. People are like, why aren't you watching debates? Because there's no one who's been decided. We have 4 months. We'll see what happens. I don't need to know anything now. It's all chaos. I got other higher priority things to do. And I made a decision 2 years ago that when the debates are going to happen again, I don't care. I'll check maybe 5 minutes once a week. When it comes out, whoever's going to be running against whoever, then I'll maybe start doing some research. I don't have that much power to make a decision over that, of who's going to be at the end of the day. Do you? So why invest all that time, effort, and energy into these things that are getting us caught up in things that are distracting you from your higher priority. Because unless you're running for office, does it really matter? You'll vote when you vote. And you can take an hour, 3 hours, 5 hours to do that research a week before. You don't need to spend the next 6 months every day with chaos in your life and toxicity in your life. So that's the idea of the doorman. And again, I'm speaking for me, I'm not telling you what to do. This is my own personal bias. And it's the deliberate practice of setting values and rules that dictates who or what is allowed to enter into your life, personally and professionally. So when I did this workshop 6 months ago at this Shabbaton for young professionals, we did the whole thing. I actually had them do the list, which we're going to do in a few minutes. And then I asked them, based on this list of traits, how many people would go back out and date any of the people that they've dated? There was about 60 young professionals from 20 to 40 that were there for that class. So how many of you would redate somebody, based on the list you have clear right in front of you now, would go back out again with any of the people you've ever dated since you were doing adult dating? So about, again, 55, 60 people. One woman raised her hand and she said, of all the people, I would only have redated one guy. No one else raised their hand. So can you imagine how much time, effort, energy, pain, and suffering this could have avoided? If on date 1, you know what you're looking for, and you check your list. On date 2, you check your list. Date 3, you check your list. Date 4, you check your list. And if they're not lining up and you say, it was nice to meet you, you seem like really nice, I might have someone in mind for you that might be a better fit. Or run. Unfortunately, which thing. So when Rick was dating his wife, he got older, married older, and he goes, he was talking to his therapist, and between date 1 and date 2, he's like, I think she has the stuff on the list. And so his therapist goes, show her on the next date. So they're near the end of the date, whatever restaurant they're at, and he goes, I want to show you something. And he goes, I want you to read this list. This is a list of my core values when it comes to relationship. So he passes it to her, and she's looking at it. Great, so what's for dessert? 4 kids later. Right? Sometimes it can really be, and this is a person, as he jokes that he was like the perennial bachelor and was never going to get married. And he can, right, at that, the joke, right, the wealthier he is, the more choices he had. But he chose, and he owns that because he went back to his list. And now everything he does is based on this list. He told a story about a colleague of his who was looking to buy a business. And he said, if you know a CEO that I can hire to put in for this business, please let me know. And a month later, he went back out with this colleague of his. And the first question was, did you ever find a CEO? Rick is asking his colleague. And he goes, no. And he's like, oh, well, did you still buy the business? And the guy goes, no, I didn't buy the business. Because I have a rule that unless I have someone to run the company, I'm not going to take it on. It's going to make my life more chaotic than it will make it simple. So this guy created a rule. I won't invest in something unless I have the people to help me do it. I'm not going to do it alone. And then he started adapting that rule into his life. So he won't buy a new company unless it has everything in place. That's one of the main things he looks at. How is that structured? Or does he have someone to put into those roles? And these became values-based decisions that have made his life much more simple. So going back to this idea in psychology, spirituality, Judaism, business, is this idea of entrepreneurship that I said a little bit ago, where I believe that entrepreneurship is truly a psychological lens that, if done right, can be the most powerful way that someone can manifest their potential. And the reason why is that, well, let me ask this question first. Raise your hand if you believe that you are an entrepreneur in this room. Okay, so about 5 people, 6 people. So I'm going to read you this definition. An entrepreneur is someone who defines core values and makes all accountable decisions based on those values. So if you're a parent and you made decisions on what type of school you want your children to go to, based on certain experiences that you want them to have, or the values of that school, or the teaching style of that school, is that an accountable decision? And if you decide what type of food that you want to buy in your home, that you want organic, or you want kosher, or you want organic and kosher, right? Whatever, or you want this and you don't want to support that, is that accountable decisions? So according to Rick, his belief is that you are an entrepreneur once you define your values. and then you make decisions that are held yourself or held your community to that standard. So by default, every single person should be raising their hand. It's a very different way of thinking about it. And then you have the concept of entrepreneur, right? You're out there and it's your company, you're helping and you're building it. Or you have the intrapreneur, which is a person who works for a school, a business, a company, a medical practice, and you're helping it grow by bringing your talents and your traits as long as it aligns with your values. And I think that's where most people suffer when they're working for someone else, is that they end up getting a job that they want to be at because it might pay something, but it doesn't always align with their values, and then they're stuck because there's the fear of taking the risk too. But you wouldn't take that job in the first place if you were crystal clear, right? Think about like stock market. There's a company called Monsanto. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with Monsanto. If you're not, you should be. It's probably one of the most evil companies that exists at this point. Not only is it one of the companies that's probably causing, right, how much cancer that they're being sued for and all these other things. They might be doing other with this genetic modified debate, which we can have the positives and the negatives, but they just bought Bayer Medicine. Bayer owns, on average, I'm not sure the exact number, let's just say 5 to 10 patents on cancer treatment. And Monsanto is being sued for giving people cancer. But no conflict of interest, right? So in the stock market, their gains were like 30-something% in a year. It's pretty good. Who would not want to take that? Right? Go figure. God bless. Right? So you can put your money into that and make your 30% increase in 1 year. Or you can say, my values don't align with that, and I'm going to have to sacrifice something and put my money elsewhere. These are how nitty-gritty this can become. We have this thing of like, we don't buy German cars. Some people do. Israelis are okay with it. South Africans are okay with it. They could buy their own German cars. They love their German, right? We still have this thing of, do we buy German? Do we not buy German? So my siblings both have German cars. I don't. It's just a thing. I'm just still not. And then if you start watching The Hunters on Amazon about this whole, see, right? Yeah, I'm already up to episode 7. So it's you start realizing, I'm like, oh yeah, this is why we really hate them, and why they hated us, and why we don't want to buy their stuff. We don't want to give them money. Now, German society today is a little bit different than German society 50 years ago. But at what point do we have the right to decide, this is what works for me? The cars are great, they're wonderful, they're beautiful machinery. I'm not there yet. I might not ever be there, and I'm okay with that, but that's a values-based decision. And everybody has the right to decide what they want to do for each. So, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send this around. And then take and pass. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, as you take and pass. And I'm going to start passing the pens back that way. Yep. Just take one and pass them around. If you don't have to do this now, but they're coming around. So what you're about to get has 2 sides. And this is why I didn't want to give it before, because everybody would be like, in the page, what do we have to do? So here's where you get the opportunity to start thinking. But it's really going to be a project that I'm going to send you home with, since we really only have about 10 minutes left. On one side of the page, on the front or back, it's coming around still. Yeah, they're coming around. They're coming around. Here, let me take a stack and bring them back there. Okay. So if you flip to the page with all the different words, that's the whatever you want it to be for you, the front or the back. But with the page with all of the words. So there's about 200 character trait, Middot, values words on there. It's not an exhaustive list, it's just a list. It's on the back of that page. There you go. What I want to challenge you to do, there's not more coming around. Is there any extra? I guess they didn't make 2 sides. That's mine. That's not even.
No, it's.
Oh, that's mine. Oh, there's the back side of this one. All right. If not, I'll give you the link, and you guys can. That's just the questions. I don't have. There's extras around. But again, if you have your phone, I can give you the link at the end and tell you exactly where to go. It's all online, just in case this happened. They only give me like 30 copies. But I'll explain it to you. On one side of the page is a list of words. That list, again, is not exhaustive. But what I want you to do is decide for yourself. And you can do this in multiple categories, but we'll start first for yourself. On the worksheet, it says, 8 to 11 on the other side, but I would say 3 to 6, 4 to 7 core values. That if I had to say every single day, every decision you're going to make for your personal life, who you are, what defines you, are going to be made based on these core values. So when you have to make a decision, you hold up your list and you say, does this decision I have to make align with my values, yes or no? So it doesn't become an emotional challenge. It doesn't become a peer pressure challenge. It doesn't become an ego challenge. I decided that if I make my decisions for the rest of my life based on these 4, 5, 6, 7 words for my personal life, the outcome that I will have will be exponentially more successful and in alignment with the person that I want to put out into the world. So in a way, reverse engineer. Reverse engineer the perspective. The real question is at my 120, as we say, what do I want to be known for, and what's the message that I want to be broadcast in my legacy through the world? Because you can't get there unless you reverse engineer the game plan. Because if we're looking forward, we're still going to be anchored and tethered to something back here. But if you set goals, and this is a whole other workshop on goal setting, most people set goals way too small. Do you know how we set goals? We decide that we want to do something, and then we lower it back just before it starts giving us some anxiety and fear. So we say, I want to lose 50 pounds. Oh, that's really a lot. I'll try for 30. Say, I want to make X amount of dollars in the next year. I don't know if that's really doable. I'm going to drop it back another 20, 30 grand. As opposed, but because the problem is we set our thinking based on solving the problem the old way. And if you change the problem, you want to find a new way of thinking about how to solve it, not solving it the old way. So I'll give you this therapy 101. The problem is not the problem. It's what you believe about the problem. That's the problem. The problem is not the problem. Whatever you say is, this is the problem in my life, this is an issue in my life. No, it's not. It's what you believe about that. That's either causing it a problem for you or making it an enhancement to your life. So 99% of the time, the thing that's going on in your world about whatever it is, your relationship, your health, is your belief about that. And if you're trying to solve a problem from that anchored belief, you're always going to be tethered back to it and be yanked back. So that's what I'm saying, like to reverse engineer, where do you want to be? And then make a new mindset from there. So your first challenge again, 4 to 7 keywords. And whittle it down and whittle it down. This is not an hour process. You come up with your first batch, you'll probably have 15 or so. What you can do is what I did, is that I started taking some of the words that I really loved and kind of putting them into different categories. And I found out which one of these words really helps me define these other words. And I made those words my definition. And they're right on my homepage of my business. You just go on the website, this is what it says right there. And then I go into another thing about, here's what they actually mean. And then during the sessions, I'll be like, at the end of a few sessions, I'll give it to my clients. I'm like, am I doing this for you? Am I aligning with this for you? Because if I'm not, I need to know. So that's step 1. You're going to define, you're going to come up with that list, those words for who you are, who you want to be, where you want to be, what your brand you want to push out. And then you have to write a sentence about it. What's going to happen? What are you trying to do with these Middot? What do you want to be known for? What's the legacy you want to leave? How do you engage with the world through that lens? So that's challenge number 1. You're personal. And if you go to the other side of that page, you'll see an example. Just borrow yours. So this person chose, in the example, family, powerful relationships and teamwork, leadership, mentoring, coaching. This is one because it was way too many. I changed it from 5 to 7 from like 8 to 11, right? Achieve big things, solving complex problems, physical and spiritual well-being, and adding value. Simplify it, right? So the person said family. My family is my personal foundation. I cherish time with my spouse and family and look forward to opportunities to grow with them. That was their definition about that. So now they get to look at this thing and say, does this decision, does this vacation, will this allow me to spend more time, or is it utter complete distraction? Will this thing that we're doing, so Rick has decided on Sundays, they go to church, and there's no, if their kids are invited to a birthday party, him and his wife have decided, the party's on Saturday at school, but Sunday is family day. All they do is hang out, play board games, they have a big breakfast, they have guests over.
Keep Shabbos.
They keep their Shabbos. But no birthday party. Like, that's just like a decision that they made. Sunday is family day. If Chick-fil-A ain't open, neither are we. So, it's the deep south. Powerful relationships and teamwork. I seek opportunities to grow and nurture strong, loving relationships with quality individuals, and I know I will get further when I foster teamwork. Right? Your definition can be your definition. It doesn't have to be anybody else's. It can be whatever the heck you want. You get to author it, but just tell yourself, tell the world, where do you want to be? Because where you came from doesn't matter. What happened last year, or 6 months ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, whatever mishigas that we're holding on to, whatever traumas we're holding on to, doesn't define who you are today. You're allowed to change. But most of the people going through that stuff probably doesn't have this crystal clear. And I like to joke with my clients. I'm like, yeah, but you went on date 5 with them. And then you went to bed with them at some point. And then you got engaged. And then you got married. And then you had kids. Why is it their fault? You said yes all along the way. You could have said no at any time. But you didn't. Where's your doorman? For wherever it is. Oh, I can't believe I gained so much weight this year. Where's your food doorman? I can't believe I spent so much money on this thing. Where's your shopping doorman? I guarantee you, if you just do these core values and you define what are the doorman principles, which are really putting that into place, I guarantee you that your life will change in ways that are completely unrecognizable. So thank you. If you have any questions, happy to hang out and answer it. If you can't find the worksheet, I'll give you the website when we're done.
Your session was excellent.